Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your leadership, your life, and your business, and your leadership impact. Today, we're going to be taking an insider look at why being a misfit might be the key to achieving the kind of success and fulfillment you're presently only dreaming of. As you listen in, remember that you can chat to us, and you can chat about the show, about this very episode, or about past episodes on our Facebook group. It's a private group. Just get yourself in there. Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast on Facebook. Come and join us and let's have a chat. If you're a new listener, new viewer to the show, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. Remember, you can now find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you tune into your podcast. We always need your help in staying relevant, so please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. When you do so, then go back to that Facebook page, Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast, and tell us so that we can give you a shout out live on the air, all right? And you can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday on a vast array of stations, including, yes, wait for it, including finding us in Lancaster, Philadelphia on 102.1 FM. You can also find us in, let's see, I'm trying to find a place that might be close to where Dave is, but we'll see. You can find us in Florida at 97.7 The Village in Florida. If you're a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners, we are honored to be cited by Inc. as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. And you can find us on Google Home and Alexa. Simply say, play Dov Baron Podcast. So thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. We really appreciate it. All right, let's strap yourself in and let's dive down deep. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, or entrepreneur, or a leader in any capacity, you've been told that there are rules that you'll have to follow to climb the ladder. But what if you don't want to use a ladder? What if you don't like the rules? What if you've always felt like a bit of a misfit? How can you use your misfitory to propel you to new heights of success? Well, stay tuned, because our guest today on this episode is the entrepreneurial misfit himself, Dave Lukas. Dave Lukas is a serial entrepreneur and investor, founder of Misfit Entrepreneur Podcast. His companies have been on the Entrepreneur 365 and Inc. 5000 list multiple times. He has been featured on radio, TV, and many of the top trade publications and web such as Forbes, Inc., Yahoo, Finance, and many others. He's an in-demand speaker who presents for a wide array of organizations, many of whom are Fortune 500 and top universities and trade groups. He is the author of the bestseller, The 10-Year Career, a fast track to retiring young, wealthy, and fulfilled. Dave Lukas is also the founder, as I said, of the Misfit Entrepreneur Podcast. In less than a year, the show grew its footprint to over 60 countries, reaching over 30,000 people per month. A weekly podcast devoted to giving his audience the incredibly useful, unique, insightful insights from the world's top entrepreneurs and highest performers, with a focus on non-traditional methods of achieving success with their misfit side. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the microphone the misfit himself, Mr. Dave Lukas.
Mr. Baron, it's a pleasure to be on with you and everybody out in the audience. So thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, always a pleasure and honor having a chat with you, Dave. So let's just sort of fill everybody in, because this is not a blind conversation. You and I have met, we have hung out, we've had a lot of giggles together. We met this, as we record this, it is we're at the end of the summer, or going to be at the end of the summer of 2018. And we met at the beginning of the summer in San Diego, had a lot of giggles, a lot of laughs, and found a lot of common ground between the two of us. I think might be because we are misfits in every sense of the word. So tell us about this brand, this Misfit brand. Why did you decide to go in that direction?
Yeah, it's an interesting story of actually how it happened. The whole thing actually started as a side project to leave behind wisdom for my daughter, Hannah. My wife and I adopted our daughter about 5 years ago from China. And as you probably talk about a lot of people listening to this or watching this probably understand, is that we are really conditioned to be who we are from the time we're born. Right? It's the influences of our lives, parents, friends, media, culture, religion, school, all that stuff, makes us who we are. Nobody comes out of the womb and they say, hey, beautiful baby, too bad they'll never make more than 30,000. Doesn't happen that way, right? We are taught to be who we are. So I'm really hypersensitive to this. And so having this little 18-month-year-old, even from the beginning, there's these teachable moments and things that I realize I'm conditioning her with. And I was fortunate in my early 20s to study with a lot of the greats, directly with Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, done a lot of work with those guys. And I found myself remembering all these things bubbling up in these teachable moments with this little one, right? And I said, man, there's got to be a way to immortalize all this amazing information from the people that I get to work with today, from those I've met before and those I will meet, for Hannah from her daddy and his misfit friends. And that's kind of how it all got started. And as I thought about it more, every entrepreneur is a misfit. All of us are. We have unique ways that we accomplish and do things and everything to get to where we're at. And so as I went into that a little bit further and really started to think about what that meant, for me, it really became the inner misfit that I call it, which are these secrets, these strategies, these habits, these ways of doing things that, and I'll tell you, after doing, 100 plus, interviews of these people all around the world at this point, it's not one thing that they do exponentially better than anyone else. It's usually a lot of little things that everybody else already does. They either do them just a little bit better or do them in a way that is more impactful. And that adds up to a huge competitive advantage. And so that's what we explore. And that's what we do with the show. And it's, like I said, I started as a side project, never knew, I was going to leave it behind for her, whether somebody listened or not. And, here we are now, 18 months in, and we're in 80 countries now and, over 50,000 listeners a month. So it's just been an amazing ride.
But, when we have to look at the framework here. So the framework is misfit, but in order to call oneself a misfit, we have to compare ourselves to something. There has to be something that is not misfit, that is quote unquote normal, whatever the hell that means. So at what point did you, obviously you've called the podcast that, but that suggests to me that you have categorized yourself as a misfit. When did you recognize that you were not going to follow the normal path?
When I was 5 years old.
Okay, there you go. So let's talk about that.
So
are you?
I'll tell you a funny story. Hopefully your audience will like it. So interesting upbringing. So I grew up, one side of my family was very successful, all entrepreneurs. A lot of them retired by the time I was even born. Okay. The other side of the family grew up in literally poverty, sold cookies on the street at 8 years old to help make ends meet. Every crazy kind of story you can think of, from, people holding them hostage with guns in their house to all kinds of stuff, happened to this family, and they all made it out and were all successful. Some as entrepreneurs, some in the business world and all of that. When I was born, my parents had a combined income of about $10,000, $12,000, and there were hookers outside of our little apartment that we had in Akron, Ohio. Right. So I wasn't.
So bottom line is you lived in a classy part of town.
Yeah, exactly. It was, it's a high rent. Right. So, I didn't come from any, with a spoon in my mouth or any of that type of stuff. But I got to see the successes, growing up, and got to see the principles. So when, I was always driven, I was always that little kid that if you told him he couldn't do something, he would. And so at a young age, I looked at my mom and said, I want to make money. And she's like, we'll figure out a way to do it. And I said, okay. let's do it. And I came up with this idea to make American flags and go sell them to the neighbors. Now, we had moved by then. We had moved up and, lived in a little nicer area, so I could walk the streets with my little red radio flyer wagon. So here you go. You got this 5-year-old going to every door, 5-10 cents for an American flag. You're going to love this in a second, by the way, for an American flag. And it's 100% close rate. Who's going to say no, right? Get to the last house of the neighborhood, right? And it's the house that shades are always down. It's kind of dark. You don't see the people a lot. Muster up the strength, and the courage to go to the door and knock on the door. And it seems like an eternity. It was probably like 5 seconds, but it seemed like an eternity. This little old lady answers the door, right? It just looks nice as can be. And I do my little pitch. I'm selling American flags. And there's this pause, which seems like another 5 seconds, right? Goes by. And she looks at me and she goes, "No, thank you, honey. We're Canadian." And she slams the door in my face.
Oh,
So that was my first stab at rejection, but not all was lost. I went home and told my mom. We made a Canadian flag, and I went back and sold it to her. So that was my first entrepreneurial venture.
Right there, that rocks. The fact that you see now, right there, I'll tell you something. Little sidebar for a moment. I've said that there are certain things that I believe everybody should do because it will help them in their life and in their business. And I said, I haven't done them all, but I think you should do them. But one of them is door-to-door sales. Everybody should have an experience of door-to-door sales because it trains you to deal with rejection. And most people facing that rejection will go crawl in a ball and hide and never come out again and certainly never knock on another door. The fact that you knocked on the door, got rejected. I mean, it was by a Canadian, so it was probably did it very nicely. They probably went, but the fact that you got the rejection and went away and adapted, as opposed to going, oh, they don't want my shit, but you adapted and made a Canadian flag and went back. That for me right there, Dave, that tells me that's more than entrepreneurship, mate. That's a high level of adaptability that I think every entrepreneur needs to grasp. Is listen to the marketplace.
Well, it's a critical thing, especially in today's world, adaptability is. Now, look, we know awareness is the catalyst to change. When you understand and you're aware to something, you can really do it out of choice and understand it. I wasn't aware. I naturally did it. And some people naturally do things. There are, so that's everybody's got those. And this is kind of that inner misfit, right? You have that natural ability for these different things, and recognizing it and harnessing it is a critical aspect to truly succeed, right? And so that awareness does have to come in at some point. Back then I didn't. As I got older, though, I did start to become aware to this natural tendency and reaction that, that really was conditioning that I got from the upbringing to kind of have, be able to thrive in situations that, would be adverse. And that was maybe from where I was born and all that type of stuff that we went through, or watching my parents overcome and move forward, and, learning from my uncles who, basically, created a whole business in the music industry, that those influences helped to condition me and help that further. And so once I became more aware at it, or became more aware of it, it made it much easier to do. So, so that's always been something that I've really held on to, and, I've really taken into business. Look, you can only work with and focus on the things that you can control in any situation. Most people, when something goes wrong, they focus on all the bad things that could happen, and they go into, and it's not just the fear of it, but it's just all the things that you can't control. Mm-hmm. And so for me, as I've grown, one of probably my biggest assets to my business partners and everything as we've grown is the ability to be calm in the moment and to be able to take a look at what we can control, take the action, move forward, and not worry about that other stuff and make it happen. It's kind of that boiler room moment you have to be good at. And I think that's becoming a very critical thing for any business executive, entrepreneur in today's space, with the way that things are changing as fast as they are.
Yeah, there's no doubt that things are changing incredibly fast. What you described in that little kid with making the flags, obviously is the roots of entrepreneurship. But I doubt that anybody called you a misfit at that point. At what point did you realize that you were a misfit?
So in growing up, that was very
at 5.
It was. But growing up, I always seemed to do the opposite of what people really expected. So, for example, I was a star football player in high school, but I didn't hang out hardly with any of the other jocks and stuff. I hung out with the musicians and the crazy people and all that stuff, right? And I just gravitated to it. Maybe it was that I liked the diversity of it. I had, I played football. I practiced with these guys a couple hours a day. It was more fun to go play guitar with my other buddies and, do those creative things, right? So, and so as I continued to grow and look at mentors and stuff like that, I usually pick the people that went against the grain. And reading a lot of books, and reading a lot of my early mentors were from books. So you read about people like Robert Kiyosaki. He's a misfit entrepreneur, the guy who went totally against the grain. He threw the whole financial market around real estate and everything on its head, saying your house isn't an asset and that sort of thing. So I've always gravitated to that sort of thing. And a lot of the things that I've done, nobody would have expected, right? Nobody would have expected me to graduate college with a degree in finance and then go abruptly bring a network marketing vitamin company to market in Columbus, Ohio. And use the life savings I had at that time and live in my car to go do it. I didn't have to. I had plenty of offers coming out of school, but that experience was actually a huge failure, by the way. I lasted about a year. I think I created a residual income of $1,000 by the time I was done, but it was the best learning experience around building businesses and understanding myself that I think I've ever gone through. It was painful at times.
Okay, so stop there.
But yeah,
I don't want to run off the subject here. So talk to us about that, because, this is one of the things I've talked about that a lot from stage and trainings with my clients one-on-one. It's what I call all chips on black, where you go all in. You just push it all onto it and you go all in. And I say you can't win unless you go all in, but you can lose everything. Right? So you can only really win if you go all in, but you can also really lose. And you went all in and you lost.
Yes.
Right. So how old were you at that point?
Early 20s.
Early 20s. Single?
Yeah.
So not as much to lose.
Right.
Somebody might be watching this who, I don't know, maybe he's in their early 30s. Maybe they've married. Maybe they've got a child. And they're going, yeah, you know what? That's easy for you to say, but I've got a kid. I've got a mortgage. And my wife doesn't make as much money as I do. I can't go all in. What's the direction for that person, Dave?
Well, let me kind of tell the story of how mine went, because it dovetails this, and it dovetails very well with leadership, because a lot of the things that I learned going through that experience really helped me to become a leader later in life. I still didn't learn them for a few more years because I'm too hard-headed and I had to learn the hard way. But once I look back at it, and I can trace it back to that. So the reason I did that is, I had very little to lose. I mean, really, what did I'm early 20s, spend a year or two doing something that doesn't work out, I can go get a job. Here's how this came about. So at the end of high school and in college, because of my schedule, because I actually played sports in college too and everything else, I needed something very flexible that would actually allow me to pay for college and everything. And I found direct sales. So I did the door-to-door again, and the referral and all that stuff with Cutco knives, which a lot of people listening to this podcast probably have. It turned out I had a knack for it. Okay. So I was the second guy ever to sell $10,000 in their first 10 days. And so I really fell in love with sales and that ability to create really great income, scheduling your own time and all that sort of thing. Right. And that's how I paid for college. But coming out of college, I said, okay, look, I can't sell knives forever, and it's really nice to make the sale and get paid, but it would be even nicer to make the sale once and continue to get paid.
Yes.
Right. And so that's why I said, well, I like this network marketing, this direct marketing side. There's a lot of, they take out all the middlemen. So there's a lot of income in it. So let me go try. I'm a health guy. I'm a fitness guy. It seemed natural to help bring a company to market. So it wasn't just a blind decision. There was strategy behind it. But what I didn't know how to do, I was a one-man band as a Cutco sales rep, and I did really well. But I didn't know how to build a team, and I didn't know how to inspire a team, and I didn't know how to grow a team and make it infectious so that it would continue to feed on itself and everything else. And when you're going to go into network marketing, it's not about you, it's about that team. And that's what I didn't realize. So after about a year of just busting through walls on my own and pulling people with me because I couldn't lead them, and I would have somebody sign up and drop out because I couldn't give them what they really craved and needed, which was that leadership and that training and really that motivation and inspiration behind the scenes, telling them they could do it. I wasn't that guy. I had done okay, but I was working 2 other jobs to make ends meet. I wasn't losing money. I was paying my bills, but I was sleeping on the floor of apartment and on a mattress, right? And so I said, all right, I don't know what I don't know. And I had this crazy idea and said, hey, I want to either build or run a Fortune 500 someday. So how do you do that? You get on the ground floor to Fortune 500. So I went and found one that actually turned out very well. It was kind of the right one for me. It was a company called Paychex Inc. A lot of people have probably heard of them. I ended up spending about 7 years there. Okay.
7 years.
Yeah. So this goes to your question. So we're coming back to your question now. So I spent about 7 years there. I got on the ground floor as a sales rep. Took a lot of what I learned from direct sales and everything. Was, rookie of the year, top sales rep, did all that, fast tracked into that management and leadership, training the rookies. Everybody, when you're successful, they all want to take what you did and teach the new people how to do the same thing. Yep. And that's where I started to really understand, what it takes to lead and everything, because now I was in a way put on a pedestal for a lot of people. And I had to balance that humility with the things that I'd done and then teach others to be able to do it and everything else. So that's really where I started to become a leader, and started to also take over low performing offices. My first low performing office I took over, I turned over the whole team in 6 months. And I'm having lunch with the SVP at the time, and they're laughing because they knew exactly that I would do that because I was a pace setter. And so if you know what a pace setter from a management term is, it's basically you walk in and try to make a bunch of views, and because I tried to make everybody me, because, hey, look, I did it, just do it this way, it works. I blew up the whole team. And that was finally when I learned the lesson. So what is that? Like 4 or 5 years later from the network marketing experience, I finally learned the lesson of what it meant to actually work with who that person is and bring out the best in them as they are, learn personalities, learn all the things you need to understand to really become a leader and lead people in the way they need to be led, right? The student arrives when they're ready. So while this is all going on though, because I've had a lot of success, I have a lot of autonomy, I'm building businesses on the side. I'm investing in companies. I'm investing in real estate. I'm doing a number of things. Some of those businesses I still have today. Grass Technologies, my largest business, being one of them. And so for those of you out there that are in a position where you can't just make the leap and go full Monty, practice what I call chicken entrepreneurship. Keep the job to pay your bills, build your business for your future on the side. Commit, right? If you treat a business like a hobby, it's going to pay you like a hobby. So commit, I'm going to spend 10 hours a week in whatever it is. I'm going to give it all my devoted time during that. And I'm going to treat it like a real business. And I'm going to build it. That may be network marketing for you. It could be buying a piece of real estate and learning to manage it. It could be consulting. It could be a number of things. In today's gig economy, back then, the internet didn't exist. The long tail that exists now, I mean, literally you could start a company where you teach people to play guitar while canoeing down a river in Montana, and you can get people to come do that with you. Yeah. That didn't exist 10, 20 years ago. There was no chance you could find that. So there's a million things you can do, but you don't have to step in and just do it full right off the bat. You can build it to a point and then step into it. And I would advocate that.
Yeah, I think that the building a side hustle is always a good thing, but there's still that point of leaping off.
Yeah, there is.
What we're talking about, which is that leaping off point where, okay, the guaranteed salary is now gone and it's all chips on black, and I'm all in. And that can be very terrifying for a lot of people who are entrepreneurial. But to move over to the other point of what you brought out, which I think is a vital leadership point, and that is that I think that most people who are put into management positions who think they are leaders are actually in the clone business. They're trying to create clones. And you're not really a leader until you understand that not everybody is you.
That's right. Your
strategy is fabulous for you, and it's fabulous for people who are just like you, but it's absolutely horrendous for people who are not like you. And as you spoke about and made clear, that's a really good way to lose great people.
It is.
So that leadership thing around, because again, we're back to this same theme, which is adaptability. And I think that adaptability is a key focus of great leadership. It's not just adaptability to the market, not just adaptability to technology, but adaptability to my people, to my customers, to all of those things, and realize that, yes, I have to be authentic. I got to be solidly recognized of who I am, and I have to know that and be clear with that and working on that and developing that. But at the same time, not looking at the world through those lenses, looking at the world through, who are you? Dave is not Dov. There are strengths that Dave has that I don't have. There's probably strengths that I have that you don't have. But if I'm trying to make you into me, that's the nature of that is just exactly what you're saying before, which is to rebel and go,
you want to find 1 + 1 = 3, right? And that's what you want to do as a leader. Now, it's a very common thing to fast track people that are successful into leadership roles. The problem is not what happens. Like my SVP knew I was going to blow up that office. They knew I had to learn that lesson. That's why they were laughing. And we had a 3-hour lunch where they finally had an example to hit home with me and teach me what I needed to learn. They were very good at that. And this leader was a great leader for me, one of the best. I still keep in touch and, talk with them, throughout the year, even today. And the thing is that the bigger thing is, are you willing to actually learn from that and make the changes? That's the harder thing to do, because most people are set in their ways. Their conditioning is set and all of that stuff. So to be able to take that feedback and say, okay, what do I need to change to become a better leader, and then act on it and do it? That's the harder part. It's not knowing what you need to do. It's the action of doing it. And
most people want to look to somebody else or something else to blame. And so if it didn't work out, I taught them this great stuff and they didn't do anything.
Yeah. Well,
as opposed to looking at, oh, hold on a second, you are the common denominator in every relationship you're in. And if people keep walking away, might want to take a look in the mirror. Just a thought.
In today's age, it is said, but a lot of people play the role of the victim. Now, I say role because it doesn't mean they're victims. No. It means they play the role of it. And I think it was T. Harv Eker that said it in one of his books, where I think I first read it. There's no such thing as a successful victim. And that's true. Right. And so the thing that I took and by the way, the next 6 months in the office, we turned around and grew sales by over 25%. How did we do that? I had to change. I really delved into the personal growth side specifically for leadership. So, everybody from people like you, John Maxwell, others that had things out there at the time. And I started to develop my own rules for leading. I have 4 rules for creating great teams that work well together. So those were developed during that time. They were, and one of those rules is people support what they help to create. So guess what I did? The people that I brought in, I had them help work on the rules with me. And that made a more cohesive team. And I learned to understand personalities very well. So I have a unique way that you probably heard of DISC before and that sort of thing. I have a unique way that I look at personalities. I actually don't look at DISC. I actually look at them as animals. And so, that's how I taught myself to understand personality types and stuff. And I, understood where people fit and who we needed on the team to complement the team. And this all came together, and it took about 6 months to get it together. But after that, it's repeatable, it's executable. In every office I took over was 100+% of quota every time because of that. And it wasn't me, it was them. It was just putting the right structure and things in place for them to do that. Right. And that's,
so was that your own design, or some people were bears and some were rabbits and some were dogs?
Yeah. So it was, so the way, remembering DISC and like complacent, amiable, and these different words, it's like, it's too hard to think that through. I'm a visual guy. There's 3 ways we learn: auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. I'm more of a visual learner than anything. So I started looking at it and I'm like, all right, the D is the dominant one, right? These are the people that are short on details. They just want to get it done. They move really fast, and all that stuff. Who does that? The lion does. The lion's the king of the pride. The lion just wants to get it done. They just want to sit on the rock and make sure things happen and, have that control and everything. That's what the lion does, right? So I associated that. The next one is your influencer, right? So the influencer is the person who is the life of the party. This is the person who runs around. Everybody knows them. They got 1 million friends on Facebook and all that stuff. And so what other animals are like that to the life of the party? If you go like the zoo, if you've ever been there with your kids or anything, the otters, they run around, they're clapping their hands all the time. They're just having fun. They're, that the otters are always doing. So the otter is that person. But you have to understand, if you're going to put a D with an otter, okay, and a lot of D's secondary characteristic is an otter because they're outgoing and that sort of thing, and they're not afraid. But a true otter, a D can run all over and really, like an otter. If you unfriend them on Facebook, they get sad. If they don't think, these are the people like, oh my gosh, I don't think they like me, right? Because they want to be liked. So a D, without even thinking about it, just pressing on to get something done, short on details can just bulldoze over one and create a really bad situation. Right. So again, you have to understand these things. And then the other two, for the S is steadiness. So golden retriever, steady, loyal by your side. Yeah. And then the complacent, amiable, real detail oriented, loves control, is the owl. Studious, detail oriented, so it just helps me to remember. And when you think of it in that way, you and the audience can have some fun. Go out there till they start looking at the people around you as you meet them. You'll probably say lion, otter, owl. It's kind of fun to do that.
I think there's also, it's Dr. Morrow's Island, because most people are some kind of weird combination of these things.
Yeah, there's one dominant. You're really all of them in some way, but there's one that's always more dominant than others at work, and then there's one at home. That's why you have the natural and adaptive style and the Diz. Yeah. So yeah. So you wrote a book, a best-selling book, The 10-Year Career. Tell us about how that came about. Why did you even bother? I mean, you're a successful businessman. You're a serial entrepreneur. You're a successful businessman. You got a lot of stuff going on. You're speaking. Mm-hmm. Why the book? Well, so I talked about in my early years in the 20s. So when I had my own business to start, and I continued on with business and started paychecks and was doing well and everything else, I would take a lot of time and go study with, other successful people. I got to meet some billionaires during that time and millionaires, got to study with Zig, got to study with Brian Tracy, even Tony, and a lot of these different people. And I kept this journal of all the things that I had learned. Right. And so it got to be like this thick at one point. And I started at some point in this journey, people started asking me for advice because they knew about the success I had and the different things. And so I started to kind of consult really by referral only and advise and that sort of thing. And so after doing that with some people and really helping, a few people, we doubled their business in just a few months and things like that. People said, you really ought to put this stuff in a book. Because every time a situation would come up, I'd open the book and I'd say, oh, yeah, this is an idea I took away from so-and-so, here's what we can do here. And so that's how that came to be. So that 5-year journey of studying with all these people and bring it down kind of got condensed into the 10-year career. So that's how that all came about.
So who is that book aimed at? Is it aimed at entrepreneurs, or is it aimed at executives, or is it?
No, it's aimed at anybody who is looking to shortcut their way to the success that they know they deserve and they should be at. It's great for people starting over. If you've, hit bottom or you've hit a wall and you need to start over, or if you're a kid coming out of college and you're looking for the right things to do to put you on the path to succeed faster, that's what's written for it. Because look, nobody had a playbook for me when I came out of school. Nobody had a playbook for me when I came out of even, working in some of these areas I did, right? And so the goal was to give a playbook for different areas of your life. So everything from, hey, here are the things you need to understand about your conditioning and your mindset and why it matters to you and how you can have true choice in your life and live from that and how it can make a huge difference. Here's how you need to understand about finance, right? And why investing in real estate or these different things really work well and why some of the wealthiest people in the world do this, right? And here are the things that you can do to, put yourself onto a better financial footing, whether you're starting over or you're just starting out. Goals, right? Understanding why goals are important. Look, there's all these crazy goal setting programs and all this stuff. Look, goals are beacons, right? It's a direction. That's what you need. How do you do that, right? So it kind of builds on itself that way and has a number of things, and then has some of the top things that I learned from studying with these people, the top 10, stuff like that in there. So it's it's a complete playbook for anybody that wants to get on the fast track.
One of the things about hitting the heights of success in anything is you got to have clarity. But one of the things you talk about is the possibility that clarity can be a bit of a curse. If it is a curse, And I'd love to know why you think that, and how can we break the freaking thing if it is a curse?
Well, clarity by itself is not a curse. The search for clarity is the curse. People are told over and over again, you got to find clarity. You got to have clarity. You got to have clarity. You got to know what you're going to do 5 years from now. Nobody knows what's going to happen 5 years from now. I mean, let's be realistic. So what happens is it becomes analysis paralysis. Talk about the person who is waiting for that moment to jump, right? And make that leap or whatever. People tell them, you got to have crystal clear goals. You got to have crystal clear this and that and everything else. Well, people are searching, and they keep searching for this clarity that honestly, it's never going to be fully clear. And that's why I said you need to have a direction, not so much exact clarity on everything. And I'll tell you this, that business plan that you spend 50 hours creating and making all nice and pretty, about 10 minutes into your new venture, you're going to throw it out the window because things aren't going to go as your business plan says it's going to go. That's not how real life works and business works, right? So it's the ability to adapt and be able to deal with that unexpected and find a clear way to get through it in the moment and be able to move forward as long as it's keeping you on that direction that you want to go. Yeah. And so that's the clarity curse. Clarity by itself is a great thing if you can get it, but not everything's going to be crystal clear. So don't wait for it all to be crystal clear or you'll never get going.
What you're saying is that clarity as a jumping off point is what can cause so much stifling, is that I'm not completely clear yet.
Right.
Well, guess what? No one is.
That's right.
No one as successful is. There's a lot of very clear people sitting in their garage tinkering, right? And everybody else has been adaptive. I think there is a point of clarity, but it's got nothing to do with the venture or even the outcome. It's a clarity of person, and meaning this is like I'm constantly working on the clarity, and it's an evolution. And I think that this is the other thing with clarity where people get stuck, is they think it's a conclusion rather than an evolution. No, it's an evolution.
Well, yeah, great. Yeah, and a great example is 20 years ago, the clarity that you had at that time or thought you had is probably completely different than what it is today.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm saying about it being an evolution. There are things that in my work I will say to people, tell me something that you're absolutely clear about today. And they'll go, okay. And then they tell me, I say, that's fabulous. Now tell me something you were clear about 10 years ago. And they'll tell me something else. And I say, now tell me, how did you feel about the thing you have clarity about today? Well, I didn't have clarity on it. So should you have stopped? Because you already had clarity about what you knew at 30. So at 40, why bother?
But if you asked 10 years ago, did you have a direction that you knew you wanted to go? Exactly. They would probably say, I had this direction. And have you continued on? Have you reached a lot of those things in that direction that you wanted to get to today, 10 years later? Yes, I have. Exactly. So that's the difference. And I think that's a very important distinction. So,
and it's interesting because it kind of segues into your podcast, because you had a direction, which was to leave, as you talked about, which was to leave this legacy for your daughter. But it's an entrepreneurial podcast. So so somebody might go, what the hell are you talking about, Dave? Come on, you're pulling my leg here. You've created this podcast for your daughter, who's a little kid, and it's about entrepreneurship. Come on. I mean.
Yeah. So there's a couple things. I believe entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship is the way of the future. I believe entrepreneurs are what will continue to make the world go and be even more impactful in the world in the future. So for me, the future is even more entrepreneurship. Because what I talked about, that long tail a minute ago, before it was the power and the capability was concentrated in large businesses in the hands of a few. Now anybody can have that. It is the ultimate in what the founders of the United States coined: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You have that ability as an individual to unleash your inner power of who you are better and more than any time in history. And it's going to get even easier with the technology and the things that are at our fingertips today. And so realizing that, I wanted to leave behind a trail of entrepreneurship wisdom and insight for Hannah to be able to follow, if she chose to go that route. And the other thing is, every 5th episode I do is called Lessons for Hannah. And what that is, it's not necessarily about entrepreneurship. It is a lesson that I want to teach her about life, about anything that I feel is important. And so you'll find those are actually some of the most popular and most favorite episodes. And they're not that long, 5-10 minutes in some cases, but it's me talking directly to her about a specific topic or something. So actually we just did one on leadership, which you'd probably like.
That's very cool. So let's, is it okay if we get a little more personal for a moment here?
Sure.
So you said you adopted your daughter from China. Can you tell us why you decided to do that? Some would say there's plenty of homeless kids, plenty of kids without parents in America. Why would you go to China? Why that particular route? And I'll just tell you, I have friends of mine who are in the news today as we speak. They're in the news because the Canadian government has followed the American government, and my friends are stuck in Japan with their baby that they have just adopted. There are 5 Canadian families. There's some American families. One American family adopted a Japanese baby. The Japanese baby is now 2 years old. The mother had another baby, contacted the adoptive parents. The adoptive parents went out, got all the paperwork, went out, got their second child, so siblings, and are not allowed to come back because the American law changed, and the Canadians have followed suit. So my friends are literally stuck in Tokyo, and their visas are about to run out for Japan, and they can't bring their baby home. So I have a little bit of an emotional investment in this question about why you chose to go that route. Because as I see with them, geez, you've not chosen an easy path here.
Yeah. My answer is probably going to be different than a lot of other people's answers. The answer is because that's where she was.
Well, the reason I'm asking.
So let me tell you that. Yeah, let me tell you the story. Let me tell you. Yeah.
And for me, it was such a lovely story that it's not about entrepreneurship, but it is about following what I call your soul, following your purpose. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I want people to hear this part.
Yeah. So, so here's the story of how Hannah came to be in our lives. Okay. So, my wife and I are 10% of what they call unexplained. So everything works properly, but we just don't produce babies. Our goal was always to have natural children and adoptive children. Ever since before we were married, we had decided that. And so when that happened, we said, well, let's just move on to the adoption, right? And so we started to look at the different programs out there, domestic, international, looking at the timelines, looking at the types of adoptions, the ages of the kids, things like that. We weren't huge fans of open adoption, and that happened because we knew 2 families that had gotten their children and only within 10 days later had them taken away from them. And it really ruined their whole child experience for them, and really hurt marriages and everything else. And we said, we're not going to put ourselves in that situation if we don't have to. No. And so as we started to look at the programs, China had a very good program, and we kind of gravitated to it. And I didn't know why at the time, but you'll hopefully all understand here in a few minutes. So we go through this process, and there's 2 programs in China. There's what's called the waiting child program, which is a child that they deem imperfect. It could be missing the tip of a finger, and that's considered imperfect. More often than not, it's heart conditions, things like syphilis, club feet, cleft palate, missing limbs, all kinds of different things like that. They're not pristine and perfect like the Healthy Child program, which is, that's what they're considered there. They actually match like the child's eye color to you and everything. It takes about 7 years to go through the Healthy Child program. Wow. And it takes a couple of years to go through at that time to the waiting child program. So we said, well, look, we're happy to work with a waiting child. And this is the hardest part, because you go through a lot of things when you go to adopt. The only way I can explain it, and I'm sorry for the graphic here, but it's a life enema. If everybody had to go through what we had to go through to have a child, a lot of the problems you see out there probably wouldn't happen. But one of the things we had to do is, and this was really, really hard because it makes you question yourself, is we had to go through and choose the ailments that we would accept. So we had to go through and check boxes on all these things that we would accept. So if you don't select something, are you a bad person? You have to go through all that kind of inner struggle with yourself. And so as we're going through, we had an adoption doctor helping us. And so things like heart condition, they're actually like, yeah, pick those, because if the child's still alive, and usually they're like a year, 18 months old, at that age in an orphanage in China with a heart condition, and they're still alive, it can be fixed. right? So we're, so it was nice. We went through a lot of that stuff, and my wife saw hypothyroid, which some of the audience may even know what that is. And it's a condition with your thyroid gland that you just take medication to help regulate it. It's either hyper or hypo. And so our adoption counselor, we're reviewing this with her, and she's like, hypothyroid. We've never had a child like that in 50 years. Is you guys sure you want that? And we're like, yeah, we have a family member with it. It's all right. Just keep it on there. And so, now we go and we have to go through Homeland Security in the US about 8 months. We have social workers at our house. We have to go through all this stuff. So it's like a year later, right? And we finally start being able to get what's called files. And a file is like a dossier. It gets released to the world, right? And it's kind of first come, first serve, and they only release so many at one time. And so for 5 months, we didn't even get a chance to even look at a file. So you get your hopes up every month and then dash. Get your hopes up every month. And so it's an emotional roller coaster. And then all of a sudden, it was September of 2013. And we got this call out of the blue from our adoption counselor. I'm like, we have this little girl. She just happens to be in the one orphanage we work with directly in the entire country of China. She's about a year old right now. And she was left under a bridge a few blocks from this orphanage, which actually usually works with older kids. So it's rare that she'd even be there, but she's got hyperthyroid, and you're the only group in our system worldwide that showed up when we looked for this. So can we send you the dossier? Can we send you the file? Of course, we're like, yes, send the file right now. And within 2 seconds of looking at, this little one, it was a yes, right? So we locked up the file and everything. And then, 6 months later, we're over there, becoming a family. Now, here's the thing, we go through all this, we bring her home, and we start going to the doctors and all that stuff that you have to do and everything. And after 6 months, the doctor says to us, hey, you know what? She doesn't even have hyperthyroid. She was misdiagnosed. She's perfectly healthy. So she should have been a healthy child, right? And so you can't tell me that things aren't meant to happen the way that they're meant to happen. Everything that had to happen to that point in my life had to happen exactly as it did. And this is why I've developed a philosophy of no regrets, because everything that had to happen, it had to happen for me to be talking to you right now, delivering this message. Everything that happened exactly as it did. What could be perceived as good, the bad, everything. A rock in space had to hit another rock billions of years ago for us to be talking. A soldier makes the wrong step on a battlefield. We're not here, right? So I don't regret anything. I learn from things for sure. And if I had a chance to do them a different way, yeah, I'd take what I learned and do that. But there is definitely that soul, that higher power that drives us to the things that we're meant to be. And so that's why I say, why did you go to China to get Hannah? I say, because that's where she was. We were just meant to be together.
And the reason I, like I said, first of all, it's a lovely story, and I wanted people to hear it because we had spoke about it in San Diego. But
yeah,
it's part of the philosophy that I share with people is, if you want to grow roses, it takes horse shit. You gotta put some, the roses grow best with some shit. So,
yeah.
And that is how it works. And so it's easy to feel like the victim of the circumstance, but what if the circumstance is the refining of you? As I say in my keynote presentation, in life, things will either define you or refine you, and it is your choice. And, my story of falling on my head, that defined me for long enough until I decided it was going to refine me to discover who I really was. And when you look at all these things, the way you describe this is like, this is a great example for anybody, even in business. The fact that you were all chips on black in the business and it, and it died. Is that a terrible thing? Absolutely. It's a terrible thing at the time. It's a defining moment at the time, but you have to twist it and make it a refining moment that gives you a greater sense of clarity, a greater sense of purpose, which I think is so powerful. One of the questions that I occasionally like to ask my guests is, what do you see as the soul of leadership? And I think that we're going to get into exactly where we need to go in the context of what we were just talking about. So what do you see as the soul of leadership, Dave?
Well, for your audience and my benefit, define what you mean by soul.
No. I will not.
So, the soul, and when I ask that question, because there's a lot of things you can wrap soul around, but
of course, that's why I won't define it.
So the soul of leadership, when I look at it, right, and I look at it from a personal standpoint, a lot of it has to do with giving of yourself. Like I said before, once you really understand leading and leadership, it's not about you anymore. It's about them. So it's about empowerment. It's about understanding. It's about empowerment, and it's about belief. And a lot of times you're going to believe in people and their capabilities before they ever will, right? I mentioned before the student arrives when they're ready. And so in some ways, it's about your perseverance for them and with them to help them arrive to that point to where they break through. There's a formula that I use that I've coined called DCP formula. And it goes to all of this, and it goes the same for the soul of leadership, because this is what you have to do. DCP is what you have to do to be a great leader in every individual case. And what DCP stands for is discipline, consistency, and persistence. And so you have to be disciplined and that means doing the things you don't want to do, or even, doing the things that you need to do even when you don't want to do them. Okay. And so with that is staying in the moment to coach somebody, even when it's annoying you or you don't want to, right? And it's really persevering with them at the same time. So, but you can do that one time, right? But that's not going to carry it through. You have to do it consistently, yes, day in and day out, as hard as it is sometimes, day in and day out. And then even if you do that, even if you're disciplined, even if you're consistent, you're going to hit walls, either with yourself or with the people that you're coaching and leading. And you have to be willing to persevere and persist through those walls however long it's going to take to get through them to reach your next level, or you're going to plateau. And you see that a lot with businesses. They're disciplined, they're consistent, and they persist to a certain point, and then they stop because they're not willing to go to the next level and persist through it. And so it's the same thing with your lions and your otters and your golden retrievers and everybody else. They all have these things that they need to be disciplined with. They need to be consistent with. They need to persist through. And being able to recognize that and help foster ways to help them do that easier really helps you to lead and really helps you to believe in them, which, for me, is the essence of leading in the soul of things.
That's very cool. Which I'm certain is a beautiful segue into, you believe that for leadership and entrepreneurship, there are 4 rules for building a great team. Tell us.
There are 4 rules. And a great organization for that matter. And DCP falls underneath these. So the first one is people support what they help to create. So what that means is you need to include the people that have a stake in it, or give them stake in it to help them grow the strategy, whatever it is you're working on together. If you're a team, that doesn't mean that they are the end all be all, but they have input and they get to feel valued in having that input. And you give them that value and you empower them to be able to have that. That's a huge thing.
So let's stop there. I want everybody to get that. So say the quote again. People
support what they help to create.
People support what they help to create. And, I know, because in my book called Fiercely Loyal, one of the things I talked about is people having ownership in something. And, this is exactly what you're talking about. And it's very simply put and beautifully put. And I think that everybody needs to get that, particularly when you're an entrepreneur or you're a business leader. It's easy to become egocentric and make it about you and your idea and it's mine. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, if you're not going to get to the level you want to get to without a team, and doing this is a great way. What's number 2? That's fabulous.
Number 2 goes with number 1, right? So people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. So not only do you give them the ability to support what they create, but you help paint that vision and show them together what that can be like, and show them how they're part of the bigger picture, and how even whatever their role is, whatever they do, how it has that impact and how it is part of a greater good, a greater, achievement, a greater thing, right? So that's the second part.
Number one motivating factor of millennials, just so everybody knows. And again, I will remind you, I've said it a million times on this show, if you think about millennials as being 19-year-olds, they're not. The oldest millennials are 38 years old in 2018. So these are people stepping into leadership roles in big way. And the number one motivating factor of millennials is meaningful work. They want to be part of something that is bigger than themselves. To Dave's second point.
The third is that people live up to the expectations that are set for them. So if you give them the meaning and the value through helping to support it and build it, and then show them the vision and show them how they fit into the bigger picture, and then you set the expectations for what they need to do to be a part of it, they're going to work towards that and live up to those things because they know the greater good of what that becomes and everything else and how that fits into things. And so setting expectations and stretching people is okay. And that's part of that, but that's where that leadership, that discipline, that consistency, that persistence comes in and weaves through all of this to help them do the right things, to help them live up to those expectations. You're not off the hook just for setting the expectations as a leader. It's your job to help them reach the expectations.
One of my quotes is that a leader creates a vision for those that she leads that is bigger than the person they're leading can see, and you hold that vision until they can step into it. And that's right. The expectations piece. I love that.
And then number 4 goes along with these, and it seems pretty common sense, but it's rarely done. Give people recognition when recognition is due. That doesn't mean you just go out of and recognize for every little thing, but when somebody goes above and beyond and does something great or really puts the extra effort in and makes something happen, recognize them for it. That doesn't mean you have to do it in front of everybody and all that type of stuff. There's actually philosophies on why you maybe shouldn't do that. But it's just a handwritten note, a $10 Starbucks card. Hey, you did a great job. Get some coffee on me to re-energize. Whatever it is, just take the time to recognize people. And as a lion, which I am, one of the hardest things to do because we move so fast, and it's not because we don't have the empathy and we don't understand, aren't appreciative, but we're moving so fast, we're on to the next thing. Take that 5 minutes to stop back and recognize that person or recognize that group or whatever it is that deserves it, for the accomplishments and stuff they've done. So those are the 4 rules.
No idea how important that is, the recognition piece. Again, it's in my last book, Fiercely Loyal, but one of the things is to not just recognize people, but recognize people the way they want to be recognized. There are some people who want to be called out in front of everybody, to be recognized and applauded. And there are some people who want it very quietly with the door closed. And there are some people, sort of recognizing and actually bothering as a leader to find out what turns on that person's light, what turns makes them feel validated and valued is extraordinarily important. That's the refinement of this. These are 4 factors.
Absolutely. Yes, you have. And that goes to understanding your people and stuff too. I'll give you a great example. Years ago, I had a sales rep that was a great rep. She was really coming on and everything else. And she had this goal, she was driven by, she wanted to get a new vehicle. She had another child. She wanted to get a new vehicle. And so she had in this case, she had a particularly really good month, right? And so she went above and beyond. She was exceeded her quota and all that stuff. So I'm driving by the dealership of the car, and I stopped and got a brochure and a card from the sales guy, and I kind of explained, hey, here's what she's going for and doing, and I'd appreciate if you could really take care of her and give her a special deal if she decides to come shop with you. So the guy wrote on the card 10% off. You come in and see me when you hit your goal, and I've left it on her desk with the brochure. She loved it, because it helped put that visual to it and helped spur her. She got her car. That's what motivated her. It's what drove her. So, but I recognized her for it and left a little note. Said, "Hey, hope we can get this together soon." So it can be all sorts of things, and you need to decide that by the person. But you're absolutely right in that point.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Well, we are coming right to the very end of the show, and I want to ask you a couple of last final questions. The first one is, what is something that you have recently learned about yourself? Something profound that you've recently learned about yourself, because I believe that leaders are people who are dedicated to their growth and their development, real leaders. And we're always on a growth and insight process. So what is something profound that you've recently learned about yourself?
That despite all that I've learned about leadership and done with business, that I can ask better questions when I am leading the people that I work with every day. I read a book called The Coaching Habit. If you haven't read it, it's a really good book. And it really made
on my show.
Okay, yeah. So it really made, yeah, exactly. It really made me think about the questions that I ask, in the moment. And, like I think about, like, from a sales standpoint, if I'm, working with somebody to sell them something, right? Or when I used to ask third, fourth, fifth level questions and go really deep. And you get into these habits and stuff where you're doing like one-on-ones with your people and things are going great. They're kicking butt, all that stuff, but you're not probing deep enough to look for other ways that you can help them. And so that kind of spurred that for me. And so I started to, ask a little bit further questions, and it's actually uncovered some really cool stuff and some ideas and things that we've now put in place and on the grass technology side to drive more sales. So, asking better questions and having that epiphany was something in the last 6-8 months that really has been great for the business and great for me.
Well, I know because of our other conversations that you're an extraordinarily disciplined man, and you've made yourself that way. You talked about that, whether it's with athletics or whatever it is. So yeah. I'm going to ask you the opposite, which is, what is a guilty pleasure you have, Dave?
Oh, geez. Mike and Ike's, Twizzlers. Those are my kryptonites. And I have to have a little bit of dessert after lunch and dinner. Just no matter what, I got to have a little something, whether it's a little cookie or something like that. This is a guilty pleasure for me. So, and usually one of those things. So
fabulous. Yeah. So as we finish up, I just want to ask you to please give our listeners, our viewers, a practical piece of advice, because the bottom line is information's worth the whole in a donut. Transformation is the application of information. What is something practical that our viewers, our listeners can go do, preferably in the next 24 hours, but certainly in the next 3 to 5 working days, that would really help them to land what it is you're talking about?
I'll give you 2 because they go hand in hand. The first is understand that your beliefs that you have lead to the way you think, and the way you think leads to the emotions that you have, and those emotions lead to the actions that you do, and those actions ultimately lead to the results that you have. So if you take out everything in the middle, your beliefs lead to your results. Examine your beliefs and make sure they're the right ones. The second one is take that DCP formula and apply it to some area of your business, any one of them. Ask yourself, am I disciplined in this area of my business? Or do I need to be better disciplined? What do I need to do? Am I consistent? If I'm disciplined, am I consistent? Do I do these things? Do I do what I need to do every single day, day in and day out, the way I know to need to do it? And then lastly, is there an area where I need to persist through and I need to put focus on to do that? And maybe have some more discipline or consistency with so I can do so. You'll find that applies to every single area of your business, your life, everything. And can make a huge difference for you if you just apply it.
Fabulous. Well, this has been a great show. It's been a pleasure having you, man. Really great. Thank you for everything.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Please tell our listeners, our viewers, where they can find out more about you and all your wonderful resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to www.misfitorentrepreneur.com. In fact, there's a sign up there for, I've got a book coming out in the fall called Win the Day, How to Get More Done, Create More Freedom, and work, and make the most out of your life. So go check that out. You can sign up for that. Everybody that signs up actually gets a free copy of the book. So definitely do that. Then you can also obviously find the Misfit Entrepreneur on iTunes, Stitcher, all the same places that you are, iTunes, all those fun, iHeartRadio and all those fun places. And I'm on all social media, either as Dave Lukas, Lukas, or Misfit Entrepreneur. Please connect. Feel free to send me messages. I read and respond to everything that I can. It's not always in the moment, obviously, but I will respond to you. So thanks.
Thank you, Dave. It's been, like I said, real pleasure having you with us. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. I want to thank you. And I want to remind you, dear listener, to not just listen, but take action. Put it in action. Dave just gave you a practical exercise to do, so go do it. And remember that if you've enjoyed this show, you can go over to our Facebook group, which is Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. Go to the group and chat with other listeners and with our guests about what it is you've learned. And I encourage you to reach out and to Connect with our guest and tell them what you got out of the show, because they've given you their time, their energy, their effort to share that with you. So I appreciate you doing that. And remember, the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing even the most successful companies can be somewhat counterintuitive, in that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize that they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, only to have them leave at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in training and developing your talent, only have them leave before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to keep you and your organization at the very top. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. And remember to stop by the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, matrix like the movie, .fullmontyleadership.com. You don't need a triple W. And get the Authentic Leadership Matrix self-assessment tool. It's valued at $197. It's absolutely free for you. matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. Remember, you can also get us on Alexa and Google Home. Simply say, play Dov Baron Podcast. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Until next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about where you need to apply DCP. If you don't know what that is and you just tuned in, start the show again so you don't miss it. I'm Dov Baron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.